Welcome back to my channel for a short Leica episode. And in front of me on the table is the brand new Leica SL3-P, the newest member of the Leica SL lineup, the Leica system camera family. And I've posted my introductory video about this camera already. I'll post the link down below in the info box. If you have not seen it yet, please look it up. You will find a lot of data points on this new camera in that video. And it's tradition on my channel. Everyone following me for a while knows that if I get my hands on a new camera, I also want to test night photography and take long exposures in low light on a tripod. And this is what I'm going to do today. It's still bright daylight outside, but tonight I will drive to a location I've chosen already and test this camera out for its low light and night photography performance. Let's kick this off. If you have not yet subscribed to my channel, please do so. Subscribe, hit the notification bell, support my work. Many thanks for that. All right, night photography. What I will do, of course, is I will shoot at base ISO. And so I will go here in the menu and deactivate the A for auto ISO. And 100 ISO is, after everything I did to find it finally out, the base or native ISO of the camera sensor. And that means we have no amplification at all of the signal coming from the sensor if we shoot at an ISO of 100. And that's exactly what I want if I shoot at a tripod, of course. I also want to go into self-timer here. So it's just sitting below the drive mode and will activate this. In the settings, I will go to 6 seconds to be on the safe side, but I will have mounted my Leica SL3-P on a very sturdy tripod, so we have no shakes and vibrations. And I will shoot first, very likely in aperture priority, which you see here, but I will very likely very soon during the shooting switch into fully manual mode. And then we'll take longer exposures and see how this camera performs in low light. And I want to show you now quickly the location where I'm shooting this, so you get some context about the scene I'm capturing with this brand new Leica SL3-P. The time when I'm filming this is still 2 months to go for the official go live, the official Leica announcement of this brand new Leica SL3-P camera. So I cannot exclude that my sample images are not yet fully optimized because I have here a pre-production sample with pre-production firmware. But I've just looked into the footage. I must say it's very, very nice. And I'm very happy with the results. So I want to walk you now through the images. We'll discuss them in detail. And then I will conclude the video, of course. All right, my dear friends, it's sample image session and time now. And it was a beautiful evening here. You see the Swiss mountains here. This is at 1/5 seconds at f8.0. These images are all shot at base ISO, which is 100 for the Leica SL3-P. And look at the Swiss mountains here. Very, very nice. Some houses in the foreground. And this looks really good, in my opinion. And I said it already when I showed you in my introductory video sample images taken at daylight. The image quality of this new Leica SL3-P is just 100% flawless. Really, really cool. Of course, I also wanted to try exposure bracketing. And in the settings, you go to drive mode. And in drive mode, you go to exposure bracketing. And then you get the settings. And I was going for 5 frames. 1 full EV as EV steps, exposure compensation 0 EVs, and then the automatic setting to get this right. And that worked pretty well, as you will see in a moment in the sample images. So this is how an HDR sequence then comes across here. This is 1/15 seconds, this is 1/8 seconds, 1/4, 0.5 seconds, and 1 second exposure, which is overblown, of course. And then I combined them into one single frame here. And now there's something interesting going on, which I really want you to pay attention to. The first frame I showed you in the sample images was this one. And this is a standalone exposure, one shot with the camera. This is the result of an HDR process with 5 different exposure times, and the step size is 1 full stop in between. If you look at these 2 frames, and I put them now side by side here, we see these are exactly the same frames. There is no difference, so I do not gain anything in terms of dynamic range with this camera and this 44 megapixel sensor if I follow the usual HDR procedure and combine 5 differently exposed images into one common frame. There is no gain here. I don't see any difference between these frames. And that is a really good indication for a terrific dynamic range of this new 44 megapixel sensor. Really cool what we see here. The frame on the right hand side comes from a 5 frames HDR sequence combined in one single frame. The left hand side is a standalone shot and it looks exactly the same. I did a bunch of these HDR frames here, and this is another example here, 1/20 seconds. Let me go here to the frame. 1/20 seconds, 1/10, 1/5, 0.4 and 0.8 seconds here, and then combined into one single frame. Gives me now, with a different perspective, I was rotating the camera, a beautiful view over the city of Rapperswil. And here, by the way, is the castle. Look at that. And this looks really good. I think I'm super convinced about the image quality coming from that camera here. If you look at that, it looks just really good. And here's the same frame again as a standalone shot. Standalone one shot with the camera. And again, if I put them side by side, you will see there is no difference. Let me get this different. Let me pick this one first, so we have the same order. And then we have on the right hand side, we have the HDR processed frame coming from 5 differently exposed images, and the left hand side is the standalone frame. And again, there is not really a difference between these shots. Again, the same indication for high dynamic range as what I showed you before. Very nice, like a lot what I'm seeing here. Now let's continue to look into dynamic range here. So this exposure here is 2 full stops away from the correct exposure if I take as orientation the exposure compensation scale on the LCD screen of the camera. And I can correct this easily by pushing the exposure slider up in Lightroom by 2 full stops to a correctly exposed evening shot. The next image is now 3 stops away from the correct exposure. And you see the difference. This was 2 full stops under exposure. This is 3 full stops under exposure. And again, I can correct it easily by pushing the exposure slider up by 3 full stops in Lightroom. And if you compare the 2 full stop under exposure image corrected in Lightroom and the 3 full stops under exposed image in Lightroom, it's kind of the same frame. So also here we get indication that the dynamic range of this camera sensor is absolutely incredible. And here I take it to the next level. This is now 4 stops underexposed. Then I copy paste my typical post-processing routine here. So I make some of the lights more visible. 4 full stops underexposed, still 4 full stops underexposed, but the lights more elevated based on my post-processing copy-paste procedure here. And then I corrected the exposure slider in Lightroom by 4 full stops to the right-hand side. And this frame still looks very, very good. And I came from 4 full stops of underexposure. So the dynamic range of this camera sensor is incredible. And let's crop in here a little bit. Look at this image. It still has the full spectrum of contrast, micro contrast, sharpness, clarity, detail. Everything is here. It looks really, really good. So 4 full stops of underexposure are really not a challenge for this new 44 megapixel sensor. So here is now a panorama stitching. This takes me up from a native resolution of 44 megapixel of the sensor to 80.3 megapixel. I was stitching together here 3 frames. and it's a beautiful image. Let's start at the bottom of the frame and let's walk our way through to the old castle at the center of the city of Rapperswil, then to the other side where the shopping malls are and the industrial buildings, and it looks really, really good. I like a lot what I'm seeing here, and of course you always, if you don't mind having an aspect ratio which is much wider in the horizontal dimension, going for a panorama stitching, and in this way very naturally increasing the resolution to a much higher level here from 44 megapixel to 80 megapixel. Quite nice. At the location from where I'm shooting is a very nice restaurant, so I think I owed myself some warm meal in the evening, which you see here. Very good food, very nice, and I enjoy being in these type of places and getting some food or, you know, some tea or coffee and having the camera resting on the tripod. And when I see changes in the light here, it became darker and darker, I take the next round of shots. And that's exactly what happened here. Now, the scene as I saw it with my naked eyes here was already much darker, but I pushed the exposure up to 10 seconds and it gives me a nice shot, because this is about long exposures at low light or at nighttime. And this is now a 10-second exposure, stopped down to f8.0 as all of these images, because that's a typical landscape aperture. And the SL3-P here with this 44 megapixel sensor fully delivers. Look at this image, 10-second exposure, very nice. Let's walk through the frame. Let's see the details and what's delivered here. The other side of the lake, nicely captured. Like a lot what I'm seeing here. And let me jump now to a different exposure here. This is a 3-second exposure and it nicely captures the scene. Look at that. Beautiful illuminated castle, beautiful illuminated industrial buildings, shopping malls on the other side of the lake. And here light trails from the highway which goes along Lake Zurich, and looks very nice how this is captured. And of course, with some post-processing here, I managed to get the 3-second exposure almost as bright as the 10-second exposure. And these are the capabilities you have, the reserves you have when working in post-processing with a sensor that has a dynamic range that is high and excellent properties. And we talk here about a backside illuminated sensor, which is anyway nice for capturing low light scenes. And you see here, the 3-second exposure is almost as bright as the 10-second exposure based on post-processing. And here I think the atmosphere is more like in a typical night shot. It's more dark in the scene and you have these super elevated lights in the scene. Look here at the apartment buildings and the single family houses. Look at the illumination of the castle. Very nice and very well captured by the camera lens combination here. And then I enjoyed my warm meal for a while and just enjoyed being there on location. And it became darker and darker. And then I did shoot the next frame. And this is a 60-second exposure. It doesn't give you the full resolution here because I cropped in at the bottom side of the frame, 38.5 megapixel, and it's a beautiful image. But you see, the atmosphere is almost the same as in this 3-second exposure shot. And here now it's a 60-second exposure shot, because I really wanted to see, is there anything I discover if I push the bar higher on longer exposures? And the 60-second exposure is beautiful. It looks really good. By the way, some years back when new Leica cameras hit the market, sometimes in the firmware there were still bugs and hot pixels were not calculated out of the frame in a correct way. Here I don't see a single hot pixel. The whole frame looks really good. Let's crop in. Let's walk a little bit through the scene here. Waterfront here. The illuminated castle we saw before already in the 3-second shot, and the other side of the lake, very nice, beautiful, going here, tiny little houses with a little bit of light here, even on top of the hill here. And then of course the light trail here from the highway along Lake Zurich, very nice. And the 60-second exposure is clean, crisp, sharp, reveals a lot of details, has nice contrast, micro contrast, which of course is driven by this fantastic Vario Elmarit lens. Nice lights here on the lake and a really good shot, and fully confirms that with this camera at base ISO of 100, here's top down for landscape exposures f8.0, 60-second exposure time, fully delivers, no problems at all. Let's see what else we have here. This is a 120-second frame. Of course, the lights are then overblown here, in particular on the other side of the lake. And that destroys a bit of detail based on clipping, but generally a very good frame with 120 seconds exposure. And as far as I looked into these images and I stared at them for a while, not a single hot pixel in the scene. Everything is natural, comes across in a very nice way, and is a really good exposure. So for long exposures, we really have a fantastic camera here at our disposal. And I will now conclude the video very quickly. All right, that's all I wanted to say and show. I hope you enjoyed this short video, the presentation of the low light capabilities of this brand new Leica SL3-P. And I'm very happy with the footage. I hope it convinced you too that this camera is highly capable. And if you liked that video, don't forget to drop me a thumbs up. Stay tuned on my channel. There's always more to come. Thanks for watching. Stay safe and healthy. And of course, peace out.